Mark, welcome to the Undraped Artist Podcast.
How you doing?
Good. How are you doing? So, hey, how do you pronounce your last name? Is it Boedges?
Boedges.
Boedges. I'm such a moron.
No worries. It's a tough one. I get that a lot.
Is it? That's nice of you to say, but it's probably not. Hey, let me make sure that we've got your microphone high enough. You're not very loud.
All right.
Oh, actually, no, you're good. You're good. Actually, I think you're okay. Yeah, let's see.
You know, I see I'm blurred out here a little.
Yeah, you're really blurry. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, on the video it said, touch me up a little bit.
What it did was it just blurred it, softened it.
Yeah, let me get rid of that.
Yeah. Yeah, you look like a glamour shot there.
I know. Well, that it's not bad.
Hey, what the heck? Let me give you a minute to put some makeup on. We get this thing done right.
So I texted you. I was like, is this audio or video? Because I got to go do something.
Yeah, I hope you showered and brushed your teeth and all that.
Oh, yeah.
All right, man. It's great to have you. Seriously, dude, I've been following you for a long time. And
yeah, thank you.
Your work is next level.
Thank you.
I mean, it's incredible. And I'm really anxious to learn how you do it. I don't know. I'm assuming you haven't seen many of the podcasts because of the question.
I have not.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I've had a lot of.
I got the text from you and or the email, and I disregarded it because there's a lot of spam texts about doing podcasts now.
Oh, there are? Really?
Yeah. And then it came up in my last workshop, your name, and then I got an email from him. Like, oh, you need to do it. He's great.
Oh, no way. Are you serious?
Yeah. I get these spam emails where it's like, hey, we'll give you $2,000 to come on our podcast. And it's like people that have nothing to do with art. It's weird.
Really? Yeah, man. That just shows how famous you are, though, because I never get those. I've never had a fake podcast invite before.
Yeah. Well, spam is any barometer. I'm like wicked famous, man.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's good. Maybe I am famous, actually.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that student said something. It's good that the word's getting out, that the podcast is something to listen to. So I'm glad you made it. But it seemed like you responded relatively quick. So that must have all happened in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was. It was right around my workshop. That's right.
Oh, okay. Good. Well, so tell me a little bit about yourself. How long have you been painting? What got you into this career?
Yeah, so I went back to school in the year 2000. I graduated college the first round in 1996, and I did not study art. I got a degree in philosophy.
No kidding.
Yeah.
When did you graduate from high school?
What's that?
When did you graduate from high school?
92.
Oh, same here. Born 74 or 5?
73.
73. Oh,
I was old. I was old in high school. Yeah, I was the first one to drive. It was awesome.
Oh, no way. I was young in high school. I started kindergarten when I was 4, and I never grew up, so high school was challenging. All right, so we're about the same age, though. That's pretty cool. All right,
you're coming up on 50, right?
I am. I'll be 50 in November. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, old farts, man. We're old farts.
Man, it's coming. It's here for me.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so you graduated in 96, and then you went back in 2000.
96, degree in philosophy, got a real job doing IT, part of the Y2K remediation.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't study computers, but took a test, and they needed basically warm bodies. And so I was like, okay, I had no plan with a philosophy degree. So started working, and pretty quickly with the full-time job, I'm like, okay, I can't do this for 40 years. It just wasn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
And so I started painting plein air, and this was down in Dallas. So I was just painting my apartment complex and
Well, why painting? Why did you just start painting of all the hobbies?
Well, so I had always done art. I was always
the
kid, draw and paint in high school, and I did a lot of it in high school. Even as a kid, I did a lot. So I was always that kid.
But it didn't occur to you. It didn't occur to you in high school that you would do this for a living. It was more of a hobby.
No, this was. So I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
This was circa 1988, 1990. Mid high school. It just being an artist was not a thing in my world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. pretty conservative family, practical Midwest mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, but it always was there, and I always kind of wanted to do it. And so I'm down in Dallas working my day job, and I start plein air painting, whatever I could find. And that was 96. I was down there in 97. And, pretty quickly I started to build steam. And I always knew it was plein air because I always knew landscape was my jam.
Mm-hmm.
And
how did
somehow,
you discover that?
Well, watching Bob Ross with my dad.
No way, I did too. That's too funny.
Oh, seriously.
Did you try to mimic his work at any point?
Oh yeah, early on. My mom's got some paintings in the house.
Same here. That's awesome.
I'm not too proud to say that he was an early inspiration. The paintings are terrible, but he was certainly inspiring.
Well, and he had his talent. I mean, for what he did, right? It was talent in his own right. But for people who never painted before, heck yeah, man! All that nice soft talk, that calming talk, it was good stuff. Yeah. All right, so you're watching Bob Ross. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So and then so it was always landscape, and somehow I knew that you had to be in front of your subject as much as possible as an artist to be the most authentic. So then it was just plein air, and this was 96, 97. So I was not aware of any plein air movement at that time. I don't even know if it had really picked up steam by then. So I did that for a couple years in Dallas, but pretty quickly,
you just do it by yourself. You just go out and paint plein air by yourself.
Oh yeah,
and no one told you that was a thing.
No, I had no idea what I was doing. It was terrible. Paintings were terrible. And my experiences, it was just like this brutal upward slog of like having no idea what to do, and there was no real internet like there is now. So, you had to go buy an art book or two at at Michael's or whatever, at the art store. And that's what I did. Yeah.
So what do you think you saw something that looked like a plein air painting that inspired you to go outside? Because I'm thinking back, obviously, like we established, we're the same age. Dude, it never would have occurred to me to go outside and paint. I wouldn't even have known. I mean, I guess it seems logical.
I don't know. It's a good question. No, I don't know that I had any. Maybe the only experience or exposure would have been something like a Monet and the Impressionists. And I was aware they went outside and studied light. And the internet wasn't really a thing. So it's not like I had vast reserves of images of great subject matter to paint at my disposal, So it was like, well, let's go paint from life. And again, somehow I knew I needed to paint from life. I don't know where that came from. Maybe
that's wild.
Teacher in high school or something. So I was right into it early on, plein air from the get-go. And it was 2 years in the Denver, in Dallas, and then I realized the subject matter was really not going to work for me. So I moved to Denver. I had some friends up there. Colorado.
It's just was it just too flat and dry or what?
Oh yeah, Dallas is huge, so it's a massive urban area, the Dallas-Fort Worth, and it's a lot of concrete and it's a lot of strip malls and subdivisions and which wasn't, I was definitely more into the mountains and the Western landscape, and that kind of thing.
Right. Okay,
so Denver. I threw everything in a U-Haul and moved up to Denver.
Were you single at the time?
Yeah.
Really? Why did you choose Denver? I mean, other than the obvious, I mean, you could have gone to Utah, you could have gone to, there's any number of Western states.
So, I grew up in St. Louis. I went to my first stint in college was Lawrence, Kansas, University of Kansas, and then Dallas. So like Denver was the immediate West, and it was always sort of the obvious choice. I had a bunch of friends out of school who went there. So it was sort of the obvious.
The first big Western city from the East. Yeah.
Basically.
Okay. And is that where you're located now?
No, we're in Vermont.
You're in Vermont?
Just outside of Burlington.
So what brought you to Vermont and when?
My wife. She's the East Coast girl.
Really? How'd you meet her?
Yeah. So we met. So I moved to Denver, spent 2 years there, did a bunch of plein air work still on my own with no training, but I was at least painting the mountains. So that was good. Had an apartment fire that burned everything, which, today I'm not that upset about, having lost a lot of that early work, frankly.
Most of us burn our stuff on purpose. So you just saved you some time.
And for whatever reason, I had bought renter's insurance like the month before.
No way. Thank God. Man, so you got away with arson. Good for you. It's funny.
State Farm may be listening, man. We don't know.
Yeah, there's no evidence, no proof. You burned it.
anyway, so after that, then I moved to Boulder, and that's where I eventually met my wife Rebecca, through a mutual friend who I went to college with. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I think I saw a video of you and your wife. Maybe it was on Instagram, but
Yeah.
dude, she was like, I remember thinking, dude, that guy is set up because this woman is totally all in.
You don't even know. You don't even know, man. In fact, I wanted to make sure we talked about my wife because it's like insane how lucky,
Oh, dude, it's like you married an agent.
Yeah, I owe everything in my art career to her, frankly. I'm just not that cool. I'm just not that cool,
You seem like a pretty cool guy. But she was exceptional. I'm not kidding you. I was like, whoa, dude. He's struck gold.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
don't get me wrong. I adore my wife, but she doesn't want anything to do with my business. Nothing.
No, so we did that business of art. We did we got a video available on my website, but we did a little blurb or two on Instagram, put a video out there. And we go into depth about not just the business of art. You know what she's really, I mean, she is a gifted coach and helper in a way that is difficult to explain.
Really?
And I've benefited from that for years.
Wow. Yeah. That is too cool, man. So
I'm really glad you brought that up. Thank you. Because I wanted to bring her up. I mean, it's a huge part. People are like, how did you get successful? How'd you get good? How did you have success? And I'm like, well, listen, it's a two-step process, right? Really. You have to get good. There's no, avoiding that step. But then you have to have a person. You got to have a cheerleader. If you're the kind of person that could sit in a studio for 8 hours a day fretting and strutting about each brushstroke, then you're probably not going to be the person that's good at calling up the gallery and going over commission rates and such, right? Like it's hard to be good at
tough to be good at everything.
Yeah.
Plus it's hard to sell your own work. I knew a guy who was a painter or is a painter, and he would do the art fair thing. So, in the art fair thing, you are the salesman and the painter. You paint for 6 months, then you sell for 6 months and travel around the country. That's what he would do. Man, could he talk up his own art? But most of us can't do it. Like, it's really hard for me to not tell him everything I don't like about it.
I know. So I can tell you the very first sort of real story, which was an art fair. We were in Boulder and the Denver Arts League. My wife, Rebecca, informed me that she had signed me up for this sale. It was a weekend tent sale.
She signed you up.
She signed me up, and then she told me about it.
Dude, that is so cool and not cool at the same time.
And so it was, of course, the artist. I'm like, I'm not ready. Do I have the paintings? But I'm like, okay, we're doing this. And she's like, yeah, we're doing this. And so I got all my paintings together, and we had to frame them. So we go to Home Depot, Lowe's, and this was in 2003. And we buy a bunch of molding, like for your house. And we bought a miter
we've
saw,
all been there. Yeah.
Made a bunch of frames. And so we did the show, and I think we sold all but one, virtually sold out. But what was happening, of course, the frames were terrible. So everyone was buying the paintings and then walking down to the Abend framing tent, Abend Gallery. They had a framing tent there.
Yeah.
And she was reframing them all. Well, she had seen enough of them. She came over at the end of the week. She's like, "Would you like to show in the gallery and so
get some real frames?"
Yeah. That was understood.
Yeah.
So that was the first real gallery sort of introduction.
Are you still with Abend Gallery?
No, I haven't been with them for some years.
Was it a good start at least? I mean,
it was a fantastic start.
Really?
Fantastic. Yeah. Good. They were a good gallery. They still are. Yeah.
So what is how are you making a living now? I mean, is your wife primarily your agent at this point, or do you have galleries?
So, we've gotten to a point. We are, I don't know how many years on we are in the professional world. That was like 2003 was the first sales, but I didn't go professional full time until 2013, maybe.
Really?
Yeah. So I was good enough to make those paintings, and they were good enough to sell. They were priced appropriately, of course.
Right.
But I was not anywhere close to maybe where I needed to be for more consistent and larger gallery representation. you know, I was thinking like galleries, or it's like a sports team, right? So I was invited to Aben, but I was coming off the bench. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it took a while to sort of keep working my way up and get better and better.
Do you really think your work improved that much in that 10 years?
I do.
Really?
Yeah. So I went to school in 2000, and so it was like about the time we did that art show that I was winding down the my fine arts degree, which I never actually bothered getting the degree, but I 3 years solid study at the University of Colorado. But that, you know, they were not necessarily interested in teaching plein air or teaching even representational art
No.
necessarily at the time. Yeah, no. Yeah, so it took a lot of years of study on my own, and seeking out some mentorship along the way to get good. I was selling before 2013 pretty well, so I was letting it ramp up, you know, to where it's like, okay, we can take this plunge, and this can happen. And I'll never forget, you know, Rebecca says to me, she's like, you're going to give yourself a raise. Like, she has the faith, right? She's the person that has
Dude,
the
she's
faith.
something else, man.
I know, dude, and I have none. I got zero. I'm all like, it's not good enough. You know, in my head, you know. But
Yeah.
she was right. So I think it was 2013, maybe 2014. It's been about 10 years. And right off the bat, you know, it was a raise, and it's just been going up ever since. So
That's
yeah.
amazing. You're lucky you didn't plateau. I mean, to go 10 years and see continued improvement, that's actually quite impressive.
Thank you. Yeah. The plateau is maybe now we're
Yeah,
getting
well,
into
now
some.
you're kind of at a point where there's not too far to go. Like at this point, the improvement is sort of subjective.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's
Yeah,
true. The bar keeps rising as you keep going up, right? And so, but that's the point. Like, the game is the same all the way up.
right.
As best I can tell, I'm getting pretty convinced at this point that the game is the same all the way up. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Meaning, you know, now what I see, if, you know, you gave me one of my paintings now and you showed it to me 10 years ago and you said, you're going to paint this, I'd be like, yeah, I made it, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But I look at it now and I'm like, well, okay, there's half a dozen things I could have done better. And, you know, did it really hit the mark, and, you know, and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So, but do you see growth at all at this point from year to year, or is it
You know what it is? So here's the thing for me. I always wanted like a full-on realism in my paintings, right? I was never trying to be
Okay, can you
impressionist
define that though? What do you
Yeah,
mean by
well,
that?
that's fair. Like, I wanted it to look exactly like it looked, right? And I wanted it to, I didn't want it to be overly brushy or too much of that. Like, I wanted you to see the scene, the image.
Yeah.
However, my temperament is not such to sit there with a little brush and render out painstakingly all those little shapes, right? So
Right.
there was always this interplay between, you know, doing it in a timely fashion and getting as much realism out of it as I could. And as such, I had to learn really how to use my tools, the brushes, in a variety of brushes in a variety of kinds of ways, and variety of layers of paint, to really start to suggest the complexity and realism that I wanted to see, but to do it in a somewhat, or more or less, alla prima sort of fashion.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because there is something different about your work, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but I think you just helped me to understand it. And that's your intention. It seems different. And like I said, I didn't know it before, but you capture this quality, which you described as, I think you said it, a level of realism, or isn't that what you called it? Realism?
Yeah. I mean, you know, listen, it's not, I'm shooting for real. Like, I want it to be dead on real, but I never get there because I don't have the patience to actually.
Right. I think that's what I'm seeing though, because your stuff is painterly, but it does have this level of realism that's next level from a lot of other landscape painters, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but explaining your intention sort of answers that for me. What you've done, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you've done is you figure out a shorthand way of doing what you might have done with tiny brushes, you know, when you first started painting, when you had that desire to get absolute perfection and realism. You figured out a shorthand to get there quicker, but you're still after that.
That's right. I use a lot of layers. Like, you know, you say to yourself, I said to myself, I can't literally render all this detail that I want to see, all the complexity want to see. So I got to let the interaction of layers do some of that lifting for me, which they and they can do quite a bit of that. And then different kinds of brushes, different kinds of tools, palette knife, a lot of different kinds of application that frankly, it's a lot of high risk, high reward kind of painting. We're like, I'm not really sure how the paint stroke's going to go on, especially in a landscape where the drawing at times, especially, if you're in trees or something, it doesn't have to be exact, and you can let the paint do a lot of the work and those layers do a lot of the work.
Is it just me or the rest of you guys also get weirdly excited when you order new paint? Because I don't know about you, but when I get paint in the mail, it feels like Santa just dropped my Christmas presents off at my doorstep. With Vasari paint, my paint of choice and the podcast sponsor, it's even more exciting. And let me show you why. Because when Vasari shows up, it comes in this incredible box where each tube lays in this little compartment perfectly formed around the tube in this nice soft foam. And it's surrounded by velvet, red velvet. Now you got to ask yourself, if a paint comes so carefully protected and surrounded by red velvet, you got to wonder if this paint is worthy of royalty. It is. Vasari is. So if you haven't tried Vasari, you're seriously missing out. And the thing about Vasari, it's not only the best paint out there, it's also made by an incredible company that's been around for 30 years and knows its customer by name. Do yourself a favor, go to VasariColors.com and order yourself some for your next painting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not doing what I see artists do sometimes where you pile on the paint so thick that like the texture is supposed to represent the texture of soil or the edge of a rock as much, which isn't my personal taste. What you're doing is you're letting the shape and character of the stroke rather than the impasto of the stroke describe the texture.
Probably more so. Certainly, a little impasto from time to time is awesome and can do some of that too. For my thinking was always, I'm not after physical texture, I'm after visual texture.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And so those initial layers are washes, right? Those are washes of paint, and a good wash of paint done on a reasonably smooth surface. If you put one of those and then maybe you layer on some broken second version on top of that, a couple layers of washes, and you can let some things start to happen. If the canvas is good and smooth enough, those layers will look a heck of a lot thicker than they really are especially once you bring all the other real paint into it. From a distance, you'll be like, I can't tell what's thick or thin. But the reality of the painting is that maybe far thinner than you think. People are like, oh, I didn't realize you were this thin. And I'm like, well, I'm thin in spots and I'm thick in spots. But I don't glop it on. It's hard to control when you glop it on.
It is. And don't get me wrong. I mean, this is for you and the viewers. I love impasto. I use impasto in my paint, but not to describe texture, to describe light.
Sure. Yeah, right. I think
to grab the light.
Way to put it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty traditional. You mound up your lights, right?
Right.
To really, get them to glow and be, opaque and fully reflective, right?
Right.
Keep
Exactly.
More transparent. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, very similar. Yeah.
Yeah. And you probably notice I keep glancing to my left. And that's because as we're talking, I'm looking at your painting and I feel a little bit guilty because the viewers can't see it yet, but I'm holding out for a minute. But while you're talking, I keep glancing over at your work and trying to understand what it is we're talking about. But yeah, I see it. In fact, you know what? I'm going to do something I never do this early, but let's go ahead and just look at some of it.
Get into it.
But yeah, like this painting right here.
That's one of my favorite.
Dude. This kind of has
so we know about loose but accurate. I call this sloppy but accurate. Like if you get in on those brush strokes, it's like, what in the heck was he doing? And the answer is, I don't really know what the heck I was doing. There were some initial washes and layers that went on, especially in those darker trees. And if you zoom in, you could tell where just bits of stained canvas are doing like real work. Like some of those trunks aren't even painted.
Yeah, I see this wash.
Parts of them have, thicker stuff.
Yeah, I see this wash here. Like your pine trees over here are just nothing but a wash.
And then it's reinforced with real paint, thin, because those are dark. So I use a little medium in the darks to keep that paint in there a little thinner. Very much a traditional method. Keep your darks thin. But the beauty is, if those initial washes are correct, accurate in value and tone, to some degree, ballpark, to
Yeah.
what's to come on top of it, then I don't have to connect all my strokes. And if I don't have to connect all my real strokes of paint, things can start to happen.
Wait a minute. Can you explain that further? What do you mean by connecting your strokes?
Well, so like if you started painting just on a white canvas, right, your strokes would all have to be fully connected so you didn't have all these little bits of white showing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. But so when I block this in, right, I don't use one tone. I blocked in a sky color. I blocked in the background tree color. I blocked in the right side trees, a little darker. And then I blocked in some gray or tones for like all the snow, right? And those, as it turned out with this painting, those tones were very accurate in ballpark fashion, like to what you see here. And so they were thus very useful. Like those layers could peek through all over the place and start to do real work in suggesting all that detail and complexity.
God.
And so then like in those trees on the right, see now, if you zoom in on some of those trunks, there's a lot of real brush strokes with quote real paint,
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just like hanging out there.
They are just hanging out there, but dude, it looks so real.
Yeah, from 7 to 12 feet, the idea is it's dead on.
That's what it is about your work that's just remarkable. I mean, there's so many great landscape painters out there, and I've had some of the best on my podcast. But it's clear to me that you're after that realism. I mean, it looks like I can walk right into that painting. If I was far enough away, it would be like I was looking out the window.
Yeah, and it's an 18 by 24. So if you were about 12 feet,
it's crazy. So
I love how when you get up on them, then the idea is you get up on them and it's not just like brushy. It's like kind of a tangle that doesn't even make sense, which is why I love this one, because when I got up on it, I'm like, I don't even understand what I did. It's like kind of this mystery. And then to me, that's where the magic is. Like, how in the heck did that happen?
Yeah. But
those are rare paintings where like just kind of sings from the first note to the last one,
I don't think they're so rare for you. Maybe because you've experienced the process, it doesn't feel like it feels rare, but your finished product, it seems consistent by looking at your finished products. So, okay. So if you're working in layers, can you do this plein air? I mean, don't you have to wait for the layers to dry?
Sure. Plein air. So you got to use turpentine. Which is nasty business, but it's outside.
Wait, turpentine, does that just make the paint dry faster than mineral spirits?
Yeah, well, yeah. So turpentine dries a heck of a lot faster than OMS or odorless mineral spirits.
Oh, I had no idea. Okay.
Yeah, and there's the big brand for the OMS. I won't mention it, but we all know that will dry significantly slower than like a real turpentine. So I actually use both. The turpentine is for the initial washes, and then I use just regular mineral spirits for brush cleaning during the process of painting.
Really? So I mean, when you're outside though, it's not a big deal, right? I mean,
It's not a big deal. So I make sure to keep the jar of turpentine down at my feet, so it's not fuming up in my face as much as possible. And the initial layers, maybe 1 or 2 layers of washes go on, and then I cap the turp and it's done. It's like a 15 to 20 minute, at most, sort of process of getting those initial washes with the turp, and then it's done. And it evaporates so fast, then you're not sitting there breathing in those fumes.
And you can literally paint on wet on dry in a plein air painting if you use turpentine.
You'd be surprised how quickly it sets up. It's like
no
that.
way.
Well, and you know what? I teach out in Scottsdale in Arizona, and I tell those folks, I'm like, listen, out here, you don't even need turpentine because it's so hot and dry. In fact, turpentine in a car out there, it could be dangerous because the flash point's pretty low.
No joke. Seriously? That's actually, I'm glad you said that because I would have stored it in my car.
Yeah, no. So I'm up in Vermont and it's cold and wet and dreary 9 months of the year. So I need all the evaporative power I can get. But out there, like where you get a lot of heat and sunshine, you just use odorless mineral spirits. You'd be surprised how quick it sets up.
Dang, man, that was a nice little nugget you just shared. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. I've been doing this podcast now for 2 years. I'm getting close to 100 guests. You're like 94 or something. And I'm still getting new information every freaking podcast. Awesome. It's mind blowing to me. It's like,
what surprises me, Jeff, is that every time I teach, people are like, oh, you have such a different method. I've never seen this before. And I'm laughing because I didn't invent this. I'm not that smart. I lifted it from Richard Schmid. He was the one that was doing all these washes with the turpentine,
So really? So he talked about that? Did he talk about it in Alla Prima? Because I've never met him.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
Historic.
it's been a
I
long
don't know.
time since I read
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Man, yeah, I guess I lost that information. Okay, so let's look at a few others since we've already got it up here. God, dude, oh. Yeah, I'm glad you talked about that realism thing right up front because it was nice to get the mystery
So
out. Oh, is there something you wanted to see?
go back, go to the paint.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to the right of it, that stream scene.
Yeah, that's freaking sick.
So what, if you got up on this, there's so many washes, and then I splattered the dickens out of it on top of those washes. And if
Splatter,
you
you
kind of
just like flicking your paintbrush or
Yeah, yeah.
no
So what I
way.
did was a couple of just straight up washes, and as I said, I'll do 3 to 5 of the main colors. So there was sort of a background tree wash color, the left trees, kind of a darker wash for the river, and then a wash for the rocks, right? And then I go in and I splatter with my brush. Now I use a bristle. It's a watercolor technique. You can get as fancy and complicated with it as you can. I've heard you can use toothbrushes and whatever. I just use a bristle, and usually a crusty, broken bristle that'll really flick things in odd and peculiar ways. And it would be either straight turpentine, or turp with a little medium to give those splatters some body. And I splattered all over those rocks.
Yeah, you
And some
see
of,
it, especially here, man. It's like,
yeah, and some of it then drips. The beauty of using turp is the splatters will go on and they'll dry before they drip too much. And this was I kind of went through a phase with splattering, which I've kind of backed off of now, but this was maybe at the height of my splattering. And I would do it. So that was the third step. So there was no real paint on the canvas. And then you come in with all your real paint and you start painting in your real strokes, but you don't connect them and you let some of that splattering and stuff show through. And you can get all this texture in rocks, visual texture in the rocks that there's no way I could possibly paint.
which obviously is somewhat random and arbitrary because you flicked it on
Totally.
there.
Totally. Yeah.
So once you get this random texture on the rocks, but then you have to kind of paint around, not so much literally around the texture, but you have to paint while trying to maintain some of that texture. Then you have to think about just the general form of the rock as you go back in with the real paint, as
That's
you
right.
put it.
It's a bit of a juggling act. Of course, the drawing has to be right no matter what. And I typically don't draw first because I don't want a bunch of lines interfering with some of all this really thin stuff that can be very useful later. You can't have a line going right through it and then you got to cover up the line. So I don't do a whole lot of drawing, and then yeah, you have to have a pretty good visual imagination where you kind of can see what you need to see. You can see the scene as you're painting it and pick out all the little shapes and start to put them exactly where they need to go. I'm kind of an area of interest out guy, so I start in the main area of interest and radiate out generally.
Mm-hmm.
And so you
So
start
what would you call your main? Let me guess. Okay. Well, what I think, I mean, I'm looking in here.
Yeah, that's right in there.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe right over there. Maybe the rocks.
Maybe
on the
here.
left. I can't remember exactly where I started, but it was
it's either here or here. You can have more than one, right? But
right.
then I kind of move between these two, and then I come down here.
I'm pretty loosey-goosey with my ideas about composition. So
yeah. But it's good though. You want to move around, right? You don't want to just be stuck in one place.
I like a lot of stuff in my paintings.
Yeah.
I tell my students all the time, like, you'd be surprised how much a painting can hold up, how much it can bear.
Mm-hmm. And then your water in this is really transparent. Really transparent.
So that was, now this was not a plein air piece, by the way. This was a studio piece. And incidentally, just so everyone's aware, when I do turpentine or any kind of washes, my front porch is my toxic materials workstation. So I'll go outside and do all of that and let the painting off gas outside for a few hours and clean everything up and then come back in.
Can I comment on that real quick, just for the people listening, just how important that is? Because I had a studio. It was in a building where there was about 3 other artists, and there was a guy next to me. I was a full-time painter at the time, and he wasn't, and he'd only come in at night, and I never saw him. Mm-hmm. And this is relevant because it took me forever to figure out what was happening. But over time, I started feeling this terrible pain in my lungs, and I couldn't breathe, and it felt like my throat was tightening up, and I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, I was developing some sort of an asthma type of thing. I ended up going to the doctor. The doctor's like, you've got irritant induced asthma. Like I couldn't take a deep breath. And then I found out that this guy would come in, he would have this huge coffee can full of turpentine that he'd paint with, and then he'd leave it open
Oh
all
my
day
God.
long while I'm painting all day long. All he would do is paint like a half an hour a day. And I'm breathing this crap for 10 hours a day because we
Oh
share
yeah.
the same
Yeah.
air heating and air conditioning in the ceiling, you know? And dude, I got so sick. I thought I was gonna have to quit oil painting because of that
I'm glad you
turpentine.
figured that out though.
Yeah, it took me probably a decade to be able to use any solvents again at all.
Oh, no kidding.
And
Wow.
now I have this device where I wave my hand in front of it and it opens. And then when my hand moves away, it closes. I built this thing. It's kind of a nerdy thing, but I still have to make sure that my can, even of mineral spirits, stays closed when I'm not using it,
Sure. Yeah.
because it permanently damaged my lungs.
Oh, that's no
So
good.
yeah, to the viewers, that stuff is bad.
No, so I'm actually I'm about 90% solvent free. I actually clean my brushes with oil in the paint during the painting process in the studio.
Okay.
Um,
What kind of
you know,
oil?
I'll use the better OMS that's out there occasionally in my studio, but then I open the windows and, be
Yeah.
careful.
Mineral
Yeah.
spirits is nothing compared
No,
to turpentine, though. I mean, turpentine is so nasty.
so nasty. So
Yeah.
as I said, it's like a 10 to 20 minute process at the outset, and then it's capped and it's put away. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Good to
So
know.
anyway, with that water, there were layers of transparent. I used a little more medium in those, and those were pretty saturated, like modern colors. Like a quinacridone magenta, and you name it, dioxazine purple, to try and get that sort of translucent water effect. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is gorgeous. Yeah, I see that dioxazine back here and the magenta up here. What's sap green through here?
Little sap green. I was using a transparent orange at the time, which
Yeah,
was
I
like
see that.
Indian yellow and perylene red or something.
We have a very similar palette. Every single color you've mentioned is on my palette. That's interesting.
I've since backed off on some. I went through my color phase. I went through the splatter phase, and I went through an even longer sort of color phase. And I sort of backed off a little bit from that.
You put away the more chromatic stuff or what?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'll never forget. I was fortunate enough to paint with Richard Schmid for a few years as part of the Putney Painters, and I'll never forget. He brought in. We watched him paint a lot, which was awesome. But he brought in a little painting of apples, and it was, maybe 8 by 10. It wasn't anything big. It was 4 apples on a white background. But I think he had literally used every color on the palette in those apples, and they were red apples. From 7 to 12 feet, it was as though you could reach in and pick those things up. But when you got up on it, he used all this wild color, and I realized that our perception of reality is very lively. There's a lot of color in reality, and then our perception of it is very lively. Our eyes dart around and we're constantly looking. And I realized that what he was doing, I think, in part, was using color to express the liveliness of reality. So, as I said, the presence that those objects had, it was insane. It was like you could reach in there. I was like, okay, I got to try that. And so I spent a number of years trying to emulate that. It turns out, I'm not Richard Schmid, and I don't have that sense of color like he did.
You don't think?
So, I had to back off the color a little bit.
Really? See, I haven't seen any of his in person, so I'm not sure I'm able to fully appreciate what you're talking about. Although everyone who's seen his work knows he's brilliant or was brilliant. But
there's a lot of color in it. There's a surprising amount of color in it, especially, pretty much throughout his career, at least from what I've seen. Yeah.
Is he optically mixing color? Is that part of what he's doing?
Yeah. I mean, that's what he's doing. Yeah. But the thing about him is, and this is the trick, is that the color temperature relationships between light and shadow have to be dead on, right? So you can use all the color you want, wherever you want, but you have to maintain those temperature relationships to maintain the authenticity and realism of the light. And he did that, I swear, better than anybody I've ever seen, ever.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a better painter in this or the last century than him. I mean, he's off the charts. Man, so you were one of the Putney painters. I didn't know that.
It was toward the end there. of when Richard was participating. It would
So,
have been circa 2014 or 15 ish.
oh, okay. So you weren't there when some of the the more well-known ones were
No,
there,
that's right.
like I'm trying, like Scott Burdick.
Scott Burdick, Daniel Keys.
Yeah, Daniel Keys wasn't a putney painter, was he? I thought he just sort of
No, I don't
learned.
know if he was definitely in their group. I don't know if he like regularly did the Putney Painters. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Huh. Yeah, I didn't even realize that. That's awesome. I can definitely see the influence. I mean, you got your own thing going here, but I can definitely see an influence there from Richard
Yep.
Schmid.
Yep. Good.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Um let's pull up another one here. So show me a plein air piece. What do you have anything in your on your website that's
Let's
plein
see.
air?
I think you're on the Western page. There may be less here.
Can we just look at one real quick though, actually? Freaking A,
Yeah.
dude. I wish I could paint like this so bad. Oh my gosh, the sense of light is
Yeah, that was a
insane,
fun one.
man.
That was a fun one.
Dude, and this that I know it's just a bunch of brushstrokes, but that looks so detailed from this distance. It's
I know, and
mind-blowing.
it really wasn't actually.
No, I know it's not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was all about the water. I mean, I was out in Glacier, and it was that glacial runoff, and it gets all these crazy colors that I hadn't seen before. So I was like, all right, we got to paint that. Yeah.
So you really saw those purples in that water?
Oh yeah, there was so much color. Now this is a studio piece.
Yeah.
I did a quick, much smaller, quick little study on location.
Freak, dude. It's so good.
Yeah,
And
there was crazy colors, because you could see down to the rocks, which had their own color, but then the water had this sort of tealish kind of color. Weird things were happening. It was awesome.
and then I love how you incorporated the purple from up here into the shadows of the trees back here.
Yeah, that wasn't intentional, but I'm glad it worked out.
Way to be transparent, man. Some brilliance is just an accident.
A lot of brilliance is just an accident. Well, I'll take it.
Happy accident. See, Bob
Right.
Ross. You are influenced by Bob Ross. Man, the lighting is just what's mind blowing to me. Like I said earlier, it's like it's like you're looking out the window.
What I realized that this was one of those, I always tell my students too, higher key. Nature's bright, it's very bright, and so you have to be bright in your paintings. Historically, I was a bit of a darker painter, just tended to be a little darker, and so over the years I've had to train myself out of that, and this is definitely one where I was like, okay, yeah, you did that here.
You sure did. It feels like a bright sunny day. But you do have some darks. What would
I'm not
you
afraid
say
of them.
What would you say
No,
the percentage of darkness is? 100%, 80%, 85%?
Oh, like so somewhere down in the creases, like right where the trees hit the ground, somewhere in there, I will go almost jet black down in there, like a nice warm dark.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if I actually did that in this painting, but I often do. Yeah.
So what's the key? You say go brighter, go high key, but you're also implementing darks.
Yeah, so I didn't technically mean that I paint a high key painting. It's just that I keep the brights nice and bright.
Okay, so you're limiting the high key, so to speak, to the higher end of the value spectrum. It's not so much the whole painting is washed out.
Right. And one of the things I do is I'll put somewhere, usually in a painting, I'll put as a placeholder early on a splotch of pure white, right? Because like if you look at that snow maybe in the background or one of those rocks, I probably at some point put pure white on there as a placeholder early and said, okay, paint everything up to that value, right?
Did you maintain the pure white?
Well, so then I would come back in and maybe tone that just slightly with a little bit of yellow or whatever.
Oh.
No, I'm not afraid to put pure white in my paintings. I tell my students sometimes you need to paint the brightness, not the color, and pure white is okay. What you don't want is a large field of it, but if you have a small rock or a little glint or those rapids might have been pure white in there. I don't remember specifically, but they might have been pretty close.
There's a few little spots like right here, here,
yeah,
here. These all look like they could be pure white.
They're either pure white or they're, just tinted. So like value wise, they're just off from pure white.
That's a nice tidbit of information too. I don't know that I would have
Well,
been
as
so
I said,
bold.
as someone who's painted dark, I call it my little buoy of light on a sea of darkness, right?
Hmm.
Just bobbing along the surface, right? So I put my little buoy in there, which is just some patch of bright white, and then I paint everything up to that. I do a
Really?
lot of that.
So it
Yeah,
just helps you to not, it just helps you to remind you where the key of the painting should be, or at least
yeah, yeah,
the lights should
yeah.
be.
Because I don't necessarily key in a painting all the time. As I said, I'm kind of an area of interest outward painter, to some degree.
So what's your area
This,
of interest in this one?
well, so in this one, I was about to say, however, in this one, I do recall, sort of doing a more full block in and kind of working it all up a little, together. But with this one, what I do remember is the water went in. Anytime there's water like this, we love water, right? We're going to
Hmm.
look at water. So it's got to be good. It's got to be right. And so I hammered the water pretty hard on this painting for a long time before I got into the mountains or really those trees or
Hmm.
anything else.
Dude. So tell me about editing. A lot of every artist has a different attitude toward editing nature. I've seen some that think of painting as, or think of themselves as more of like a documentarian of nature. I've
Sure.
seen others where it's like, it doesn't even matter what I'm looking at. I mean, I painted with one artist who he was not even facing what he was looking at. Every now and then he just glanced
I
over his
painted with those
shoulder.
artists too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I've seen the whole
It's trippy.
spectrum. It is. And the painting doesn't look anything like it. And I'm thinking,
Yeah. So I'm definitely not
why are
that
we
kind of
here?
painter.
Why are we here?
Yeah.
Although I'm not knocking the painting, the painter I'm actually thinking of is Kimball Geisler, and the dude's brilliant. So I'm not knocking
Oh,
that.
yeah.
I'm not
Does he
knocking
do that a
those.
little bit?
That's what he does, dude. He doesn't even face the scene. And when I
That's
painted
awesome.
with him, I was like, wait, what are you looking at? That painting is brilliant, but it's not what I'm looking at. And he goes, yeah, I just use it as inspiration. I'm like,
That's awesome.
what?
See, now I'm envious of that. I've painted with those folks before, those kinds of artists. I'm like, oh man, I wish I could do that. I am too tied to the scene and reality to do that.
Yeah,
But
I don't wish you could do
on the
that
other
because we
hand,
need painters like you.
well, and on the other hand, though, I definitely edit the heck out of them as well.
Okay.
So
In what
I
way? Just
probably,
moving things around?
oh yeah, moving trees around or making them bigger or smaller or whatever actually. So I am not necessarily beholden to the scene either, but I'm much more probably in the middle of that space where both. It needs to be that scene to some degree. Like if I'm out there and I start having to invent a lot and too much, and I'm like, well, what am I doing out here? I could just be in the studio with some photographs.
That's kind of my
That's just
perspective when
me.
I'm outside. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And to me, now again, I'm not knocking the ones who edit to the degree that they're hardly even painting what they're looking at. Everyone has different priorities and they're all valid. But for me personally, if I'm going to make the effort of going out there, it would be like, or, it's like if I go all the way to Italy, I'm not going to come back and bring pictures that I've edited. I want people to see what I
sure,
saw, right? I'm not going to
sure,
edit them
sure.
first and be like, hey, check out Italy. No, I want them to see what I saw. And for some reason, I approach painting that way when I go outside. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm here. Let me capture the beauty that's here.
That's more or less how I approach it, and I just move things around compositionally as needed. Nature always needs help, so to speak. To get a really nice, pleasing
Yeah.
composition, or often it does. From for what I want to see. So I do a lot of editing. I'm trying to think how I edited this one, and I don't honestly recall.
Hmm.
Um,
Man, this is one of my favorites so far.
oh, thank you.
So, another thing I noticed about this, I don't see this very often when people do water, but you got right down to and with, I don't know, a small brush or something.
Little liner, yeah,
The
a
little
rigger
liner,
brush.
yeah, and you created that
Yeah, just to get all
refraction in the water.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. That was fun.
but it's just one little place, just enough to do
I
the
know, and it's all
job.
the way down there toward the bottom. When I was doing it, I'm like, I don't know if I should be doing all this right toward the bottom. But I'm a little, most of us artists are a little subversive, and as I said, I'm a little loosey goosey compositionally. So I'm like, oh heck, it was there. It really gives the sense of depth where you can see into the water and all that happening there, and then look out toward the distant shoreline where it flattens out,
Right.
basically, right?
Yeah, you're not going to see
So,
it out here.
yeah, no. So although it's well, and out there it gets blurry. The water was running faster, so it was blurred out there with the ripples on top.
Right.
But putting that detail down at the very bottom, I think it works. It worked for me, and I was like,
It really works.
Yeah, and in my head, I'm like, I think it works because it's giving you that sense of depth, and it's not distracting. It's not a distracting amount of detail down there.
No, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. Well, maybe I have now that I'm thinking about it, but it's pretty rare that you see that in a landscape painter's work unless they're a photorealist or something.
Sure.
But I like it because you're far from a photorealist. That is clearly not what you're doing. And yet that adds a level of naturalism that I'm not
Yeah,
accustomed to seeing.
that's awesome.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. All right, let's see what else you got here. There was one you wanted to go. Oh, we were going to go to another category where we could
Oh,
see
you
some
wanted
plein
a
air.
pure plein air.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do I look at here?
Do New England.
Okay. Oh
Uh,
man.
all
Yeah.
right, so the one all the way on the right is a pure plein air on the top row there. That was actually a demo for a workshop.
That was a demo?
It was a 2-dayer.
Freak, dude. Now this one I definitely see Richard Schmidt's influence.
Yeah, that's my Richard Schmid painting.
Yeah, dude, I
you.
totally see it. And man, you are right there with him, dude. I mean, you are doing some crazy good stuff.
This was back in my days when I figured I'd try, how much realism and how much grittiness and sort of real life do you put in? Like the porch was kind of all broken down and somewhat dilapidated, and that's how I painted it,
How do you go about getting these nice straight edges? Are you using a palette knife or something?
It depends. Palette knife sometimes. I've got some good chisel type, not chisel, but flat brushes that are nice and sharp and shaped well.
But how did you do this?
Yeah, well, so that's my bounty towel technique. I'm glad you asked because it's goofy and I don't necessarily do a lot of
you
it.
serious?
Yeah,
it's
so
a
what you do
towel.
is
That's awesome.
let me see how it goes. So you put the lighter tone on first with the turp wash and you let it set up. All right.
Yeah.
Then you take like a pretty wet, dark color. Like by wet, I mean you put medium and maybe some turp in it. So kind of like an inky consistency. And you take a flat brush and you go one stroke across the light color that you put down. And then you take a bounty towel and you just press it straight on and back. And you got to do the right side because one side of bounty has the bounty label, which you don't want, but the other side just has this like lattice pattern. And there you go.
You have a specific technique for lattice.
I've got crusty lattice on an old house technique. Yeah.
That's so awesome.
You never know, man. You just never know.
Oh my gosh. It kind of makes me wonder if you had to list all of these techniques, you could probably write a book or at least a small
it's
pamphlet.
pretty hilarious. I've told my students I could probably go stroke by stroke with who I was ripping off as I painted a painting, like who I was borrowing stroke by stroke.
Oh, we all do that, right?
Yeah. But then, yeah, to your point, I probably do have, I probably could write a book on all my goofy little techniques.
That's pretty nuts. See, I am a very much a brush painter. I don't even use palette knife. Everything is with a brush. And when I see stuff like this, I think
if you look at that little area where the lattice and the porch, right? It's kind of a central little area.
Yeah.
And that bit of detail really adds power to me to the painting.
It does.
Like,
I went right to it. I was like,
this is here. This is real. This is something to look at. And so you got to, in my mind, I was like, all right, well, I got to be able to capture that lattice, but I can't get in there and like literally paint it out. How could I do it in like 2 minutes or less, And so that's how I came up with that technique.
One thing I struggle with when painting landscapes like this is how to fill the tree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when you have loose leaves and there's the obvious way to paint a tree when you get this full tree and you think of it as forms and you get the shadow side and the light side.
Sure.
That's relatively easy. No painting is easy. But when you get a tree that's sort of sparse like this, I really struggle with how to design the leaf patterns. Do you have any input you could give on that?
It's hard. It's hard. I tell folks, listen, if you're looking at landscape artists and painters, look at their trees, because what you're going to see in their trees, you're going to find out how the artist really thinks, right? Because you cannot sit there and paint leaf by leaf and little shape by shape, which means maybe more than any other element, that you're going to see the artist's editing and solutions and their selectivity and how they chose to do it. So in this painting example, like I do my washes, so the sky color would have been washed in relatively accurately behind that tree. And then I might have brought a secondary wash of tree color and spotted that in. And by doing it that way, then the edges are all real soft. And then I can work the
Wait a
sky
minute.
back
When you say
in.
spotted that in, do you mean flick? Because you went like this.
No. I mean, with a, like, just kind of dabbed and
Oh,
mushed
okay.
with a
Okay.
brush. And then reinforce the sky with real paint, and then reinforce the tree with real paint, kind of back and forth into each other. But you know, if the wash bit was good, then you may have edges already, nice soft edges between tree and sky, where things are happening that you don't need to paint all your sky into your tree and vice versa, right? You can let those strokes breathe a little bit, which is how I try to do these. It's always a bit of a gamble, frankly. It's hard. You know, it's hard.
Yeah, because you
No,
paint...
and the shapes, what I tell folks is, you know, listen, you don't want to paint a nice round broccoli floret, right? It's easy to do. And so you have to there will be all these little edges that may be weird, and you have to exaggerate, you know, the branches and push them out and push some in, and, you know, to give it a nice natural look.
Yeah. Yeah. You said it's risky, and it really is, because you put so much time into this house and getting this perfectly proportioned roof line that follows perspective. And then you blotch green on top of it. And if you screw it up, you got to redraw the roof, you know? It's like...
Well, so what's interesting is the tree and the house went together.
Really?
So like that back corner of the roof was never painted.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
That was, of course, intentional, because when I do architecture, I'm always thinking, how many angles and points can I lose and still describe this building? Because it makes my job easier. You know, I have to draw as hard.
You make it sound like a lot of your creative decisions come out of laziness, and I know that's not true.
Self-preservation, not laziness, self-preservation.
Okay, that's better. This episode is brought to you in part by Rosemary Brushes. If you're one of my listeners who's a professional artist, you're already using Rosemary Brushes. But for the rest of you, come on. Take your work a little more seriously. Stop buying the other brands. It's just not worth it. Every now and then you may get lucky and buy a good brush from another brand, but use the brand that professionals like myself are using. Go to rosemaryandco.com, link in the description or the show notes, and get yourself some quality brushes before your next painting.
Well, look at that roof. Like, if I had to finish that backside of that roof, all of a sudden there may be a drawing. Like, if you have to finish all the angles, then suddenly that's where you get into like, well, what? That doesn't look right. So you just blur that out with a tree, and it works.
Yeah. Would you be one to just put a tree in front of there to avoid having to do the angle?
Yeah. If it were sort of made sense, and
it compositionally it works really well too, because
sure.
I don't know that you really want all four corners really.
No, rarely. No, the problem with architecture is there's too many edges often. Like, and I don't want to do an architectural rendering, you know, when I do it. So, yeah, I'm definitely looking to lose edges as much as possible.
Yeah.
Surprising how much of a building you can lose with edges and still perfectly describe the building.
Now, you said a couple times that you work from the focal point out. When you said that originally, I thought what you meant is that's where you put most of your energy, but I assumed you washed in the whole painting first and then went back to the focal point. Okay. But Richard Schmid, he literally will start with the focal point and the whole rest of the canvas is white.
At times. Yeah, I don't quite do that.
Okay.
You know, with a landscape, there is a little more need to, I don't know, especially when you're plein air, you kind of have to make some decisions and kind of know how things are going to go. And as much as I can hammer on the area of interest, at some point you need to leave and fill in some other things because they start to influence what you've already done, right? So there's always a little bit of play between doing the whole thing and working on the area of interest.
So when you do a 2-session demo like this, how much of it is planning for the next day and how much of it is just finishing up the next day? In other words, do you think, okay, I've got a whole nother day on this, so I'm going to paint this barn differently to prepare for more interesting textures tomorrow? Or do you just finish as much as you can on day one and then clean up on day two?
Yeah, that's more or less how I do it. I try to finish as I go and then clean up. The technique that I use, you know, it allows itself to, it's almost like you're painting the finished stuff from the start, you know? And so I just radiate out from my area of interest. And then at the end, toward the end of the session, especially on an overcast day like this one, where, you've got all the time in the world, then at the end of that session, you can say, all right, let me block in some of the tree color here that I need, a little more of the grass, maybe get some things on there in preparation for, either the next day, if you happen to be coming back out, or in the studio, basically color notes. Right. So I'll do that. Yeah. If it's overcast, if it's sunny, it's a little different, because, you got to be watching, the light will change. Right.
Right. Well, especially back east, because there's clouds in the sky all the time. It's almost never perfectly blue sky.
All the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, in Utah, man, dude, remember I told you I had a bad morning, or I had a distraction yesterday, and that's why I didn't reach out to you? Some schmuck, for no reason. I've got this great painting van that I've spent 2 years building, and there's this huge 7-foot window in the back and a very expensive glass, and some schmuck in my neighborhood just decided to break it for fun, shattered the entire window. So this guy broke the window, and the first thing I did was I checked the weather report, because, dude, if it rains, I've got this 7-foot hole in my van, and I covered it with plywood, but it's not going to rain for like the next 3 weeks in Utah, and it'll be completely blue skies for that entire time. But I remember, because I grew up in New York, what it was like there.
Sure.
And I can't even imagine painting there unless you're painting on a cloudy day or overcast day. So my question to you is, you've been to Denver. Denver's sort of like Salt Lake in that way.
Very sunny. Older, yeah.
You've lived in Denver. Now you're living back east. What do you prefer? Do you prefer the overcast day? Do you prefer and the random sunny day with blotchy clouds, hit and miss clouds, or do you prefer being out west where it's sunny all the time?
Well, I've been doing more of the Western material lately, so I have been enjoying more of the sunshine, more recently. And that, the last 3-4 years, maybe. So I've been enjoying the sunshine more. Historically, though, I've liked both, I don't know. Yeah.
I've never tried overcast, but I'm always afraid of it, because I feel like I'm not going to be able to get enough contrast or something. But when I looked at
everyone says that. And when I teach my courses, in my workshops, I say, like this painting, I say, on an overcast day, your palette actually can match the value range that's out there, and you will use a 1 value and a 10 value in your painting if you choose the right subject. So this subject was a near distant subject, right? So somewhere in that sky maybe is something close to if we say what 10's the brightest, then there's a 10, and somewhere in those darks, like under the planks, somewhere, or under the roof of the is a 10 or 1, 1 and 10. So there's the entire brightness range of your palette, and yet this doesn't strike you as a bright painting. Right?
No.
Right.
That's weird.
And so overcast is awesome, because you can basically sit out there and match what you see, right? And you'll use your full value range, and it'll look great. But you just have to make sure, you can't paint like the vista that's like 50 miles out, right? Because everything that light tends to flatten out.
Oh, that's a good tip. That's probably the problem, because everything out here is a vista.
Yeah, you got it. So it's interesting. I'm in Boulder, right? And I'm studied, and then we were there until 06, I think. So I'm painting sunshine. I'm painting a lot of sunshine, right? And we moved to Vermont, and suddenly it's like, what do we do? And that was when I had known about Richard's work, but that's when I really got, I got alla prima and started really studying it, because I'm like, oh, this dude can paint overcast. And here I am. And it was like, I have to learn how to paint closer in, like, couple 100 yards in, and up here in Vermont, that means you're painting a lot of trees and rocks and farms, maybe barns, farm equipment, whatever. That's where the real training happened for me.
That makes perfect sense, because if you paint the distant vista, then just the atmospheric perspective is going to make everything's just going to wash out.
Yeah, and in a way, I credit moving to Vermont with really helping me to become a better artist, because I was getting duped out in Colorado a little bit, right? You're painting the mountains. They're awesome, but they're all at a little bit of distance. I'm a decent hiker, but they're still always going to be at a distance for me, and so they're blued out, they're washed out a little bit, and I didn't spend long enough to where I was really learning how to paint the foregrounds like on alpine lakes and stuff yet. I just didn't spend enough time doing that, but it was a crash course moving to Vermont for sure. Yeah,
man.
Yeah, that's something I never would have thought about. Okay, freak, dude. This is a studio painting. It's gotta be. This light's too fleeting, right?
Yeah, no, that's a studio piece.
Yeah, that is gorgeous, man. The way that light, just that speckled light coming through the trees,
Ah, thank you.
just
Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah,
that
tell me
was
about how the process for a painting like this, because it seems rather complex.
yeah, right. Well, it's like all the others. There was some washes that went on, and then some real paint. Certainly the water is probably near white, so that went on early just to get that note in there. In I'm trying to remember
But
compositionally.
what about not so much the painting process?
So what I'm really interested in with this painting is the preparatory. What do you do? Do you to prepare for these? Do you go out and always do a plein air study? Do you sometimes just work from photography? How much of it is imagination? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so the idea, the best way I like to work is obviously, where you go out on location, and if I know I'm going to do a studio painting, then to go out and do a study, and at least get the value, the light, the color, and the value, right? Because that's the things that the camera really doesn't do a good job of. If I have time in that study, it may be a more refined study, something closer to a finished painting. Or if it's fleeting light, then it may just be like a quick 45-minute color and value kind of study, where everything's kind of where it should be, but I didn't overly concentrate on any of the real drawing. And then I'll bring that back to the studio, and then I've snapped a bunch of photos as well. And I always do that at the outset, because usually it's the first thing you see that captures your attention. So okay, let's get the photos in the bag first. And it's quick, it's easy.
Yeah.
And so then I come back.
Do you
to
photograph
the studio,
with an iPhone, or are you photographing with a mirrorless
that's an
camera?
interesting question. I have a fancy DSLR which I take and I use, but these new iPhones,
I know. That's why I asked.
Yeah, I mean, some of the AI stuff, I'm like, oh, that looks like it. Nice job.
Yeah, the HDR they have on the iPhones, it brings the shadows back down and doesn't blow out the lights.
I know. And so, my DSLR does not have this AI little brain in it. I know there's like plugins now, but whatever. Yeah, in time I may just go to an iPhone. But what I do now, I actually shoot both. I do my DSLR for detail because it does have a much larger,
higher res.
Yeah. And then the iPhone, just because sometimes it hits it hits the colors. And then back in the studio, I work up, any number of thumbnail sketches. So I did a number of thumbnail sketches for this one. This is not terribly invented. This is pretty close to what it was, at least in terms of the arrangement of things, the rocks and the waterfall. And then so this was what, a 24-36. So little thumbnails, like literal thumbnail kind of thing. And then maybe a larger sketch, something in like 5x7 inch kind of range, where I can really work out a few more of the details. And then from that, what I've gotten in the habit of doing is I snap a photo of it, throw it up in Photoshop, and get it all cropped appropriately and scaled appropriately. And then I project that up onto the canvas and then trace that out.
But then you have lines. But you don't want to
see the
lines.
So, and I use a pencil. So for the larger works, now I approach the larger works different. You have to know where things are going on a larger painting. At least I do. And 24-36 for me is about where I start to need more lines for sure. There's not, and the thing is, like, you can compose on the fly plein air, and you can do it. A lot of times, though, what works in a 1824 or 1216 or 1620, you scale it up, and all of a sudden those areas that weren't compositionally a problem at that scale are now a problem, right? There's too much space, or it's too much something, right? And there's nothing worse than cranking out a 36-48 and then you realize you probably should have recomposed a little bit and thought a little harder about it. So I learned some hard lessons there. Yeah, on these larger works, I will draw with it lightly, with just the number 2, sketch it up there or trace it up there. Yeah.
So is this in Vermont?
This is in Vermont. Yeah, this is in the Green Mountains of Vermont.
I didn't realize Vermont was a mostly coniferous forest. I thought, because New York is all
this,
so much
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. This stream, for whatever reason, had a lot of evergreens on, a lot of pine trees.
Yeah.
That's
interesting.
Yeah, it's weird. It's actually a very interesting little stream. It had a certain certain feeling to it, which is why I painted. I was like, oh, this is kind of a cool place, special place. Yeah.
I mean, I think I've never been to Maine, but my understanding is once you get that far north, it starts getting like this pretty much everywhere, right? Where
Yeah,
it's more coniferous.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's one of the things I love about Utah is the canyons are all conifers, and it's just, oh, it's so pretty.
Yeah.
I mean, deciduous is great too, but I don't know, something about conifer forests.
I prefer that myself. I was part of why I like the West as well, as much as I've painted, up here in New England and deciduous forest. Yeah,
they're beautiful. And that the other reason I assumed it was Vermont is because of all that granite. Man, you just don't see that much out here. That's a lot of granite right there.
Yeah, it was. It was a really neat place. The way this is somewhat representative of what it really looked like, I think.
Yeah, and you really captured that feel of granite. I mean, it really. I mean, I think I'm right that that's what that is. It sure looks like.
Yeah, well, I'm not a geologist either, but I think it. We have a lot of it up here, so it probably is.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I heard once at New York City, some of these skyscrapers, they don't even have to dig foundations; they just bolt right into the granite in Manhattan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because there's so much of it. I don't know if that's true. I'll have to check that and see if that's fact, but that's what I've heard. All right, this one, my first response to it, I just reacted to it compositionally. It's just gorgeous. But then technically my eye went right to this tree because it's remarkable how simple it is. And yet it feels so round. It's like I can pluck it right out of the painting.
Yeah.
You've really got a lot of form on that thing, but yet it's so simple.
It's, yeah. I got lucky on that one.
You think? I don't know,
well,
but it's nice.
The trees are funny. Trees are, that specific point is interesting because they're round trunks always, right? And yet you don't want to render out this perfectly rounded trunk, right?
Right.
At least
it doesn't look like you did. That's what's remarkable about it. It doesn't look like you did.
And yet if you look, I mean, I think that brighter bit is probably a palette knife stroke, right? I don't remember. I can't tell, but and then there's like a line on the right edge, like a dark, where I put that crisper line right there. Yeah.
Man, it's cool. I wonder if the tree casting a shadow on itself is helping that create that.
That
illusion.
always helps. That always helps with depth. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll do that. That's a little gimmick. That's a little trick. I always have a cast shadow from one branch to another.
Oh, you'll just make them up.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah, that's not to be missed. I mean, you talk about adding, because when you paint trees, it's like they're not two-dimensional. They're three. Those are branches coming at you, and so in order to get that or help that effect, is you always have a cast shadow on one. Yeah.
God, I'm learning so much cool stuff. All this stuff I'm going to implement when I go out again.
You got to splatter, and you got to throw some gimmicky shadows.
Bring out my paper towels. Get some lattice work done. Yeah. Yeah, I'm learning lots of good stuff. And then speaking of texture, building up textures to mimic the textures of nature. Man, this right here is like an abstract painting.
Yeah, and there was a handful of washes, some splattering, and then some palette knife and mushing. One thing I've done, and I remember in this painting distinctly, is we all think of using a palette knife with full thickness paint. But you can thin the paint down and use a palette knife, and that creates a whole nother set of looks.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
I didn't invent that. That was, I believe, Tibor Nagy. Is that how you pronounce it?
I don't know who that is. Maybe I should look him up.
Yeah, Tibornagy. I saw him, or what I thought, and I don't know for sure, but what I thought was using thin paint with a palette knife. Kind of cool. And there was a lot of that in there. Yeah.
So what are your rules for color? Do you ever exaggerate? Because I'm looking back here and I see that beautiful blue, and I'm skeptical that was really there.
Yeah, that was not that blue.
Okay, so tell me about that. What's your relationship with color?
Pushing color, on a sunny day is when you really have to push the color. And typically for me, what that means is pushing the cool tones in the shadow. Because when you bring the painting inside, we all know then you're not, it's going to be a much warmer light generally that's on that. And that warmer light is going to kill the blues and blue greens and blue purples, right? It's going to mute them down. So in order for this thing to look right inside, I'll always push the cools in the shadows. If I'm outside or if I'm starting inside, either way, that's a big part of it. And the other way is, and I heard this, I think it was maybe David Dibble had described it as he pushes his colors 20%, like outside, just kind of across the board. And maybe
The
I could be
warms
making
and the
that.
cools?
Yeah. You're just pushing the saturation a little bit. Because it was kind of like we talked about earlier, like nature's lively and colorful, and that has to come across in the painting. And the way I came to it was I would go out and paint, and I was a color matcher. Like I would sit there and mix and mix and mix until I had the color, and one by one and one. I was agonizingly slow. And after a while, what I realized was I would come home and the paintings would be kind of dead, like they wouldn't have the pop. Right. And what happens, of course, is your eyes adjust everywhere you look. So the values would, if you're looking at the brights, then we would see them as less bright as you look at them, right? And the darks would lighten up as you look at them. And so I would not have this pop in my painting. And that's where I really came to understand, oh, you need to squint a lot, and you need to hold on to the overall value structure, and you need to push the color a little bit beyond what's actually out there. Now, I'm still very much into realism. So, if I had to say like 10%, I'm pushing colors 10%. Maybe in those blues and the shadows, I'm going a little harder, 20%, cooler or bluer than it was, for example.
Yeah. What
And
do you think of
overcast is a little different. Overcast, in an ambient overcast light, you can really see the actual colors. And I still push color a little in overcast, but it's much more of like I can sit there and match color and push my warms in the shadows, and I'll get this really nice sense of overcast light in a painting.
Well, I mean, when it's overcast, you're not going to have the blue of the sky reflecting into the shadows. So you're not going to have those blue shadows, right?
So it's reverse. What happens is you get warmer shadows, and then you have to push the warm. So, you could say in both cases, or in almost all instances, I'm pushing the temperature of the shadow. If it's a cool light, or if it's a cool light like overcast, I'm pushing the warm. And if it's a cool, warm light like sunshine, I'm pushing the cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So Scott Burdick said once that he was referring to the figure, and I can relate to this because that's primarily what I do is figure painting. But he said that when he paints a portrait, he always pushes the color, and then he finds that he ends up, what he thought was exaggerating the color ends up being spot on. And that's because human nature is to subdue color.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah, so you agree with that?
Oh, totally. I said, in my early years, it was all like I thought I was matching color. And then over years, you begin to realize, no, I needed to push it because then that was matching colors. And part of it is, I think what happens is you have to put the first color on at some point, right? And if it's colorful, it looks colorful when it's just there by itself, right?
Right.
And then as you add all the other colors in, suddenly you're like, oh, wait, this thing's dead on. It's amazing how that can happen because you swear you're painting the wrong color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So
one of the ways that comes up for me is I historically tended to be a warmer painter where everything was warmer than it needed to be, especially once I brought it inside and put it under warm lights. So I've spent many years telling myself, cool your paintings off as I'm painting, right, outside, make them cooler than what you see. And if I hit it, those initial blues will be going on, and I'm like, there is no way this is right, even now, even in my own head. And as more color, but I hold on, I'm patient because I know as more colors come on, and then all of a sudden you're like, this painting wasn't too blue at all. It was dead on. Yeah.
So you're trying to compensate for simultaneous contrast that doesn't exist. Well, it sort of exists because it's contrasting with your blank canvas and editing, right, or making the color appear different in your eye than it actually is in context to the environment. But how do you know, maybe this is an unanswerable question, and maybe it just comes with experience, but how do you know that you're hitting it right when you are putting it in the wrong environment, which is a blank canvas?
Yeah, or when you've exaggerated it, like in these shadows, you're going way bluer, and you're like, I don't know. What I tell folks this. I said, listen, we're taught to paint what we see, right?
Yeah.
But really, that's only the first lesson, right? The first lesson is go out for a decade and paint what you see, which is more or less what I did. But then what you realize is, especially maybe more with sunshine for me, the way I think about it is, okay, I'm not painting what I see. I'm painting what I know. Only now what I know is informed by, 10, 15, 20, 25 years of experience, right? And so I know that shadow needs to be cooler. And I have a real sense for just how much cooler it needs to be based on all that experience. Yeah. So I joke, I'm like, the dirty secret of painting sunshine, if you really want to hit it, is you're not going to paint what you see.
Yeah, no, it's the same with the portrait. It's remarkable because I've said this before on the podcast, so those who listen regularly, I forgive me for being so repetitive, but one of my pet peeves when I worked only from life, I worked from life for like 14 years and never touched a camera. It was a personal challenge of mine. It had nothing to do with any morals, against photography or anything. I'm not.
Sure.
But at that time, people would often say, well, photography's harder because you have to edit the color and the color's not accurate. And there's something to that, but then I'd always respond with, do you actually, when you paint from life, do you actually paint exactly what you see then? Like, because when I paint from life, I'm constantly modifying color. I don't paint exactly what the person's skin looks like. I try and make it look more alive.
Right. I always say, though, that the real thing is the relationships, right? You're always painting relationships. And so outside, those relationships are right because there they are, right?
Yeah.
Whether you change colors or not, you change one, then you change the next one next to it, but you've got the relationships, whereas the camera has changed those relationships and you're not sure how.
Yeah. And sometimes exploit those relationships a little bit or push them.
Yeah.
I just painted my family and it was so interesting because this might sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but I'm not. I don't mean it to sound this way, but after it was done, my wife and son came in to look at it and I was like pleasantly surprised that my painting, the skin on my painting looked more real than their skin. And in a sense it felt, I mean, it just, I was surprised again as to how simple their skin was. And when I painted, I tried to put more into it, make it more alive by pushing color here and there.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely with you on that. 100%.
There's no formula that I know of. There's a whole lot of artistic sort of intuition, and to it.
Yeah.
People are like, Mark, how do you push color? When I teach, I'm like, well, now that's kind of a tricky question. I could tell you should push your shadows, the temperatures, and so on and so forth, but it's about developing a feel for it.
Yeah, and right after you say that, the next painting you won't push your shadows, and you're like, well, it didn't work this time. And then if they were standing there, be like, you told me.
That's so true.
Yeah, that's happened to me a few times. I'm like, well, it's not that simple. Oh, I didn't realize you had details on.
Oh, I didn't either. So I guess I included some details here.
This reminds me of probably the most mentioned artist on the podcast, Kwang Ho. His philosophy is that every square inch of the painting should be like an abstract painting all by itself.
Yep. Interesting.
You've definitely painted to that standard on this one. It's incredible. And again, the level of realism and yet no realism in a way. It's like,
I know.
It's crazy.
As I've been working larger, like my paintings appear more real because everything's mushed down, on the internet to like, Instagram size, right? But there's the same level of abstraction in the larger works as there is in something like this, which I think was in 1824.
Do you think that success, because earlier you said that a lot of it comes down to the textures, but is the success that you're achieving in realism potentially more due to the fact that you're hitting the value and color relationship so spot on? Or do you think it's more tied to the textures you're achieving?
No, it's that's a good question. It's always value and color temperature relationships. Drawing color value and color temperature, right? Those are what always make a successful painting. At least at some minimum level, right? We could say. So, and in fact, my experience is the more I thought about texture, and the less successful the painting was in a way. And I've seen this with my own work, and I've seen it in other artists' work. We go down a texture rabbit hole from time to time, right? It's fun, it's paint, right? But inevitably, the painting is always stronger when more attention is paid to, the good old fundamentals, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I say that, but then I look at this and I'm like, yeah, but this one's working because of all of that abstraction, but only on top of the fundamentals,
Well, it's working as a painting with interest, but it's not, I don't think that that's what's making it work in realism, because when you stand back and it comes into focus, then you don't even see the textures anymore. Now the whole painting is hanging on the value relationships.
Sure. Right.
Right. That's what it seems like to me. And that's hard to do, man.
It's hard. As I said, everything I do is a high risk, high reward kind of painting, right? Every time, every single start is like, well, let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
Because I want that level of abstraction and suggestion, and there's a lot of play that happens, and you just don't know how it's going to go. But it's like, it's like they say about luck, like you put yourself in position more and more and more, and then you end up getting lucky more and more and more. So that definitely happens. But nevertheless, there's always failures. I just blew a 36-48. I mean, I did thumbnails.
Totally blown. You can't revive it.
I scraped it and repainted. I did thumbnails. I did a larger sketch. I did 3, I think, color studies, traced it up on the canvas, and it ended. And I fought it and I fought it.
What do you think that killed it?
It was the composition, which was the most heartbreaking part of it for me.
Oh man, dude, I do
multi-figure. Right? Like I could have solved that problem. I had the time. And what it really is there was a gut. My gut was like, I don't think this is right. But, deadlines, and it's like, I got to get going. And
you even had a feeling and you ignored it?
Yeah. It was like the 100th time or more, 1,000th time I've learned that lesson. Like if there is any.
Or not learn that lesson.
Yeah, right. If there's any pang of doubt, stop.
Yeah, seriously.
You got to love it.
That's a good life lesson in general, not just painting.
Yeah, seriously.
Man, wow, that's rough, man. Well, yeah, I'm working on a 10-foot by 8-foot right now, multi-figure painting, and I'm starting to worry that I don't like the composition. And I'm like, oh no.
All right, well, you might have outdone me then. That's a big painting.
Well, and it's a year-long painting, so if I screw it up, I'm toast. I can't just scrape it. I've got to make it work.
I hear you.
Yeah. So, okay, this page shows your drawing chops. I wanted to make sure that I have the boats that you paint and stuff these are
the trawlers. Yeah.
Dude. Yeah. This is something else. Is this studio or plein air?
This one was a studio. This was a studio.
Oh, that's pretty, man. Now, yeah, you're right. It's very warm. It's obviously overcast. And
yeah, it was overcast, but it was definitely more of a warmer, there was sun kind of peeking through. So I wanted a more of a warmer overcast on this one. Actually, there was a Zorn painting I was ripping off for this one. He's got a painting of a dude in a boat, and then there's a woman on a dock, and it was like this kind of palette. I was like, oh, I'm going to do that.
Oh, that's cool.
It was kind of, I mean, my scene looked like that. And so then I made sure to borrow from his painting too.
So how much did you move away from the reference and toward his palette?
That's a good, it wasn't like a wholesale shift. I believe I warmed it up and maybe grayed it down slightly.
Okay.
Compared to what I had in my photo.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's gorgeous. And this one too, the drawing chops in this one, man.
Now, this was a pure plein air. This was plein air Easton way back. This was a number of years ago.
Dude, this one is awesome. That's hard, man. Those are some.
That was hard. The baskets, I was like, what am I doing? And it's it's Maryland in July, so we were cooking. There's a couple of us out there. Oh, I was getting baked. And to get all those little ovals and ellipses or whatever, like just right, And then the chair, and the fan. Yeah.
I love the way you simplified back here and made the light just blown out, because I assume you actually saw detail back here.
Well, it was interesting because it was backlit, right? So it was kind of, I don't know that I did. It's been a while. I don't necessarily remember exactly.
But if you look right into it, I'm assuming that's landscape back there, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There would be actual.
You would see stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So,
I wonder if maybe I did. Maybe I did. I might have blown that out just for, to have that value, that strong light back there.
Yeah, which is a really cool decision. and to simplify it, because if you did the landscape and all those posts, man, that would have been busy.
Oh yeah, and it's already busy. Yeah, right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess I could take credit for making that decision now that you mention it. I don't honestly
own it,
remember.
man.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, because then it was a sunny day, but the whole front where these baskets are were all in shadow. That was all just shadow. So it was an interesting compositional ish like challenge. Like I am in a sunny day, but I am essentially painting an overcast scene. So essentially it was a cool light, warm shadow scene, even though I'm out there in sunshine. It was interesting.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of one benefit in your favor, is that the hard part to draw was essentially overcast. I mean, it was in shadow, so you didn't have to
That's
worry
right.
about the light changing.
That's right. Very consistent.
Yeah.
It was. I think I don't remember. It was maybe a 5-hour painting, give or take.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I just have to take a minute to thank each one of my generous patrons for your part in keeping this podcast going. I could not continue to do it without you, so thank you so much. If you're not a patron yet, but you love the show and you listen regularly, please consider becoming a patron. It's really easy to do, and it doesn't have to break the bank. Just head over to theundrapedartist.com and click on the link Be My Patron on Podbean. And then choose a monthly donation amount that fits your budget. It's that simple. And to thank you for your generous donations, once you've reached $100 in total contributions, send me an email to theundrapedartist@gmail.com, and I will send you one of our spectacular Undraped Artist aprons. Okay, let's see what else you got here. Man, these are great. So you seem to be really interested in painting boats. You've done a lot of boats.
We started going down to the Hilton Head area down in the southeast coast. And yeah, they appealed to me. And it turns out they really resonated with folks. Who would have thought, right?
Yeah. There's just something about this type of boat
There
that
is. There is.
it's nostalgic, even though it's contemporary and they still exist today. There's a timeless quality to them.
Well, and it's that working quality. They're rusty and they're crusty and they got a whole bunch of stuff on them, so they're complicated. And I'm not a marine guy and I'm not a fisherman, so I have no idea what any of it is. But it's a fascinating sort of mishmash of stuff. And I always like all the discoloration on the hull of the boats and stuff. The rust. Yeah. This was one of my favorites right here.
Yeah, I can see why.
That blue boat in the background went on in like 2 minutes, and I did it, and I thought I was just blocking it in, and then I stood back, and I'm like, nope, you're done.
Wait, this was plein air?
No, this was not plein air. This was
Oh.
the studio. No, but this was definitely like an area of interest out kind of painting. So like I put that blue boat in the background, and I knew there was fog, and I was blocking it in all fuzzy like, and I thought I had just blocked it in.
Right.
But then I backed up and I was like, no, you just painted it. You're done. And if you were to see it in person, be right up on it, you'd be like, that's actually kind of sloppy. Like if you had that thought, that would be, legitimate. It was kind of sloppy.
Yeah, it's
but
like
it worked,
10 strokes max.
Yeah. But all that detail and complexity in the foreground really carries it in the boats,
Right. Yeah, and it feels so foggy. You really captured that.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of fog paintings, but they're fun. They're fun. And then the bird poop on the pilings,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what that is. Nasty. It looks so cool when you paint it, though. Isn't it funny? I walk around my city and I see my city's actually quite clean. Salt Lake City's quite clean, but there are some areas where it's like, bleh, where it's just not as well kept. But when you see that stuff in a painting, it's so interesting. But when you see it in real life, you're like, bleh. It's so nasty.
Go to my New England. Go to the New England stuff, and I'll show you a painting.
Wait, I didn't see a New England. Oh, New England, yeah, right there.
And then scan down pretty far. There it is. Go back up. Sorry. Up on the right, a little more. That one on the right.
That's what I'm talking about. Like no one wants this in their backyard.
Out in the middle of nowhere.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That is the coolest painting. I'd totally hang that in my house. But if they were my neighbors, I'd be like, guys, can you clean up your yard?
It was, you got the Subaru Forester out there on the left, I think it was, and all the stuff, whatever it all is. Yeah, I used to do, I don't do these really anymore, but I did a handful of them. And to your point, like I drove by this place a dozen times on the far more beautiful fare, you know, but every time I'm like, something visually appealed to me about it. It's just the way all of it went together, you know. I was like, and I, you know, this is not maybe the kind of house where you're going to stop and ask if you could paint their yard. So I snapped some photos, you know,
Right.
slowed the car down, snapped some photos, and then I got one I liked, and so I did this painting.
Yeah, that's a brilliant painting. That might be
It's
my favorite one today. But again,
there's
it's
a
like,
subset of collectors who appreciate this kind of painting, you know.
yeah, it's just so, I don't know what it is. It doesn't make any sense. It seems irrational. Did you have any trouble selling this painting?
Well, so it's I'm glad you asked. So the sales cycle was definitely longer. It takes a special collector to want to buy this kind of thing.
Dang, I wish it was
And
still
so
available.
normally, yeah, no, it sold a while ago, but it took a year or so to sell.
Really?
And then what I realized, what is this, a 2030? You can't go too big with this kind of stuff because it's not the kind of painting that necessarily goes over a mantle.
No, that would make sense.
This is sort of the other room kind of painting.
I did a landscape painting that just had a couple of tires in it like this, but the rest of the landscape was rather pure in the sense that, you know, there was no litter or anything other than these tires, and the tires were up next to a fence. So it was clear that it wasn't just random tires. They were obviously part of someone's property, and it was right next to the fence post where the gate opened. But it was at a plein air event, and it was the only painting of like 6 or 8 paintings that didn't sell. And I know I'm almost 100% sure that it was because of those tires. People just don't want to see that stuff. But
no, you know, this, if you're talking the business of art and sales, this is not the kind of painting, you know, you want to do.
yeah,
You know, it's interesting. I probably did 3 or 4 of these kind of paintings, and I kind of ended because what happened was I painted one, and it was, again, they're visually interesting first and foremost to me. But then I later found out somebody saw the painting and they knew the sheriff in the district, you know, in the town that this was, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I know that house. We're there all the time." And then I drove by sometime after that, and it had been razed completely. It was all gone. And apparently, you know, what you
like
realize
a meth house or something.
What's that?
Was it like a meth house or something?
Yeah, you realize what you're painting is poverty, and there's drugs, and it's like, okay, that started to feel a little icky. Like,
yeah.
you know, like I what did poverty porn or whatever like I don't need to be a part of that.
Yeah. Oh man, now you ruined it for me. No, I don't like it anymore. I'm just kidding. It's funny how emotion really does make or break it. You know, if you write just the perfect poetry to go wrong with a painting, it can be a bad painting and you can start to like it, or vice versa.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm out on these. I did them, you know. Okay, they were good.
No, I'm over it. I like it again. I'm gonna go. Okay. I'm okay with the poverty porn in this case.
It was not this house. This house is still there. I still drive by it on the way to ski.
Oh, it's not this house? Oh, good. I feel better. Okay.
No.
Yeah, that's a sick painting. Did you sell the one that was of that other house?
Yeah, I did.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right. Well, let's just look at a couple more before we wrap up here. I'm going to just pick out. If there's one you want to talk about, bring it up. But, oh, man, freak, dude. I don't understand how
this was interesting because both buildings are on the side of the painting. I was like, all right, is that going to work?
It sure does.
Like you're looking in between, but I got the one on the left is kind of more of the main player. So I think it kind of worked.
What a cool place to live, to have a bridge going from your house to your garage.
It's on the way to Stowe, Vermont. It's this little cool place. And every time I drove by, I'm like, I got to paint that, you know?
Yeah. My wife and I actually looked at a house up in the mountains here in Utah that had a situation like this, but we didn't love the house.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, but the bridge going across the river was so cool. And I wanted it just for that, but the house just wasn't for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just a cool thing. But again, that realism is unbelievable. And yet the textures are so abstract and so obscure. It's wild.
Yeah, this is a lot like that other winter scene we were looking at.
And it's
similar time frame.
Well, and it's like that house one. You cut off that corner again.
It's gone. It's gone.
Totally gone.
And I can imagine how it would go in. And part of me is like, I'm not sure that would be right if I put a hard line there, which is good. You know, it's a good thing I didn't.
That's something I never would have thought about. That's, again, another tidbit.
Yeah, the more you finish an architectural drawing, the more chance you have that it's going to go sideways.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a painting I did of a house a while back, and I think that's what I did wrong, now that I think back. Because the house felt like it wasn't part of the landscape.
Well, that was the other thing. So I didn't come up with this either. This was another Schmid thing I saw in his, you know, in his landscapes book, you know. His houses are always in the landscape, and there's always stuff coming up in front of him, often a lot of things, you know, because he has them buried in the woods. So I definitely took, you know, a couple pages out of that book.
No, but I don't mean literally in it as like intermixed with other elements. What I mean is it didn't feel part of the painting because all the edges,
all the
edges sort of created, I mean, I'm thinking this is what happened. Maybe I had too many edges and it sort of framed the house in a way that it separated it visually from everything else.
It very well might have popped right out, right?
That you think that's a possibility?
Definitely a possibility. Usually when things pop out or flatten out in a painting, it's usually an edge problem. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You know, where they're not supposed to. Sometimes you want that to happen.
Right. Or too many edges or too hard of edges or something.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's why these old barns are fun, because they're always situated and stuff, and they always have crusty edges anyway. So
now here's one.
Go down to that. Yeah, that one.
This one? Yeah, this is a good one.
I'm super proud of this painting because when it comes up.
Uh-oh, it's not coming. Oh, it's thinking. Give it a sec. All right. Is this plein air? No, it's pretty big.
You know, this was started plein air. Yeah, actually. And then it was quite a bit of finish in the studio.
Look at that house. Dude, that house is so beautifully drawn.
Look at the tanker. It is literally dead center.
Oh, whoa.
And we're not supposed to put anything dead center.
What were you thinking? It looks good, though. Why? How did you have the guts to do that?
I'm so proud that I broke that rule so convincingly. So proud.
You go, man. I didn't even notice it. It didn't bother me at all.
Yeah, and I've tried to analyze why it's dead center and it doesn't bother anybody, myself included.
Maybe because the tree in the foreground is right at the 1/3 or almost 1/3, and
maybe. And the house you pointed out is way more interesting.
True.
That's at the other third. And then there's some kind of truck that was just past the tanker, which has yellows or oranges. I can't really tell here.
Yeah, which almost looks like an extension of the truck.
Yeah, it's more colorful, and it's off to the left.
That's gotta be why.
I think just the overwhelming sweep of the perspective wants to carry you past the tanker, you know?
Yeah. Okay, but if you think about it, when you have a complex scene, there's something is always going to be in the center.
Yeah, it's okay to have things in the center.
I mean, everything, there's always something in the center. Like that rock isn't almost in the center, right? That tombstone is almost in the center. Like you're always going to have something in the center.
Something, that's right. As long as it doesn't stand out, it's not a standout something.
Right. Yeah, so that probably is what it is, because it sort of blends in. It's the same value as the street, same value as the house.
Same value as the house.
And then the base of the truck is the same value as the big building.
Kind of just fits right in.
Yeah, that's probably why.
It wants to carry you past it, you know?
Huh. That house, though, man, I can't stop looking at that house. That's insane, especially for such a small painting.
I know. What is that again? 18.
What's that?
1624.
1624. That's not very big.
No, that isn't very big.
So that house has got to be, if that's 16 inches, then that house is what, like 4 inches?
4 maybe. Yeah, that sounds about right. And then the wall, and then the street. You know, it's like when the snow gets plowed, but then some of it gets packed. The remaining, gets back. That was just a wash.
Yeah,
that's
you
just
can
a
tell.
wash color. Yeah. And that was one of those, I sat there for a long time and I looked at it. I said, to paint over it or not to paint over it. And I chose not to.
Have you ever seen Pete the Street on Instagram?
God, he's good.
Oh my gosh.
His perspective is insane.
It's insane. Okay, can we pull him up?
Like,
I know this is your podcast. Would you mind if I just pulled him up real quick? Because, well, the reason why I want to pull him up is because I think you're hanging with him on that. But
I don't know, man. Like, that wasn't plein air. That dude's pulling it off.
Isn't he English or something?
Yeah. Right? I think.
I think he does everything plein air.
Wait, now is he the one that paints the soldiers and marches and all that? There's another guy,
I don't know.
Rob
this-
Poynton.
Is this not the guy you were thinking of?
No, I do follow. This guy's insane too.
Yeah. But no, I think you're hanging with him. But I want to get him on the podcast too. He's a brilliant painter too.
Plein air, man.
Plein air.
Woo.
I know.
And I'm assuming mostly plein air. I don't know. I mean, maybe they see some studio time, whatever. It doesn't matter. But
Maybe. I don't know.
I know he's pulling most of that off. All the hard work is plein air. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're at your Instagram. That's a good thing. Let's just scan through and see if we see anything that's not on your website.
Yeah. So now that's a
How
plein
do
air
you
piece.
do it, dude?
That's plein air.
That's plein air?
Yeah.
No.
Two dayer.
No. Is that still available? You sold it, didn't you?
No, that's old. That's old surprisingly quick for a sort of a overcast.
I want one of your
season.
paintings so bad. I'm sure I couldn't afford them, but that's insane that's plein air. I mean, a painter can paint. The reason it's insane that it's plein air is because you've got to be so efficient.
You do have to be efficient. Yeah, you can't be messing around.
No. Man, look at that.
Well, and I mean, there was probably some studio work on that cleanup type stuff too. I mean, I'm not too like specific or rigid about that. Oh, there's my wife. There's
Okay, where's the video? We gotta do a shout out. I loved that. Oh yeah, that is it. This one? Yep, that's the one. Yeah, and
I mean, look at me and look at her, man.
She did all the talking, man. She did all the talking. Dude,
she's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Folks watching us have to go check her out.
Go check it out. I was
does
just
amazing
like,
work.
Dude, that guy
She's helped a number of artists, like, not just the business, but like just getting better. Like she's a gifted person.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll have to. Well, I'm sure she'll hear the podcast, and so I'm glad she does. She deserves the good thanks. I'm sure you give it to her plenty, though. All right. Well, man, this has been so fun. I could look at your work forever. But at some point, I got to let you get back to work. But this has been a blast. I've learned a ton from you, man.
Yeah, it has, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, look at that. Oh, there's another shack kind of thing. But this look abandoned though.
Yeah, that's one of my instructional videos.
Really? So if I bought that, I could learn to paint as good as you.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting. That one was all about washes and how to use them to start to create a good sense of reality and complexity in a painting. So that's like a great example of like sort of how I start.
Where do you get this instructional video? I'm actually going to get it.
If you go out to my website, I got online courses, and then you click the link and
it's a download.
They're streaming.
Okay. And do you do the whole painting?
Yeah, that one I did the whole painting. It was a number of hours long.
I'm definitely going to be watching that. So there'll be a link to your website in the show notes for everyone who's interested in that. I'll be one of those new customers. That'll be great. So you do the figure as well?
Yeah, we've been doing it. Now I've been out recently, but for 6-7 years, I did a weekly figure portrait group.
That's awesome. I didn't
you know what I
realize
wanted?
that.
I wanted to paint with that ability to paint with that precision, right?
Mm-hmm.
The drawing challenges in landscape, they're not what they are for the portrait.
Right.
So like there was no drawing here. This was all straight into paint, like kind of the Richard Schmid method, where he would just start putting shape by shape in.
How'd you do? Did you nail the likeness?
Yeah, I did. That's why I posted it. Now we did 3 sessions for that.
You can tell you can draw. This is precision too. You can't you can't draw that and not be able to draw a portrait. That's remarkable.
Thank you.
Well, my final question for you is if you had one piece of advice to share that you wish you had, or maybe that you did have that was really important in your career, what would it be?
Well, I think it comes back to one of the first things we talked about, and that is, it's the 2 things. You got to get good and find a person, find somebody that's going to help you.
Do you have to be married to them?
What? No, in fact, it may be better if that's not the case.
Okay, no, I mean that's a serious question.
No, and then I'm giving you something of a serious answer.
Okay.
Yeah, a professional partner, whatever. Nobody gets, I think they say this, right? Nobody is successful on their own, right? No, it doesn't happen on your own. And it did not for me by a long shot. And you got to find those people, whether it's a professor, some kind of mentor, some kind of professional relationship, or, a partner of some kind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we can't be good at everything, right? And it's like the whole thing, business, relationships, being social, being able to paint, quick, being able to paint slow. So help.
That's good advice. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I definitely have people that have really helped me along the way. But for me, it's been people, not a person. Which is, I suppose, is good too. Why not have more than one? Yeah. Anyway, well, hey man, seriously, it's been awesome meeting you. You're a blast to talk to.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
And your art is, I said it already, but it's just extraordinary. So it's been an honor.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun.
Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.